deep not only into her own life, but she also started doing some research around things that were relevant for the general community. And so I'm going to ask her to share a little bit from her story. Welcome, Miss Adrena, and then we're going to hear your story as well. Welcome, Miss Adrena.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here, to see everyone. Thank you to the family members for taking their time out and being present today. And just appreciate you, Sister Zarina, for guiding us and leading us through this process. It's been a wonderful process.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your story before you jump into your reading.
Okay, so the title of my book is Legacy of Valor, Embracing the Resilience of Elders to Chart the Course of Caregiving. So basically, I wanted to share a little bit about the legacy within my family. We didn't really know a lot of details about their legacy. It wasn't shared in that generation as much. Though we had snippets of some of the tragic happenings that kind of penetrated through the Great Migration of how a minister from Georgia came up to Ohio and established himself, had 7 children, one of which was my mother's father. I said 9 children, one of which was my mother's father. And my mother's father was a entrepreneur, started a business in Dayton, Ohio. And a lot of hardship happened during that process of getting established in Dayton, finding out that just because you came from an oppressive South to the North, all was not well. There was still a lot of racism and so forth that happened. So I wanted to share a little bit about that legacy, but I wanted to also include the values that they brought, that sometimes we don't really know that there is a strength, a resiliency, a perseverance that they exhibit. And they shared certain types of value systems that shaped our lives, and that they were our heroes. Our ancestors and elders are heroes, and we can learn a lot from them if we kind of lean in and listen. So as we do our caregiving for our elders, I wanted to be able to say to this generation that there are ways that you can learn from your elders, and how you care for them is so important. How you listen to the things that they've put before you, and they may share cultural traditions like ways of cooking, certain types of things that bring joy into your daily life. There are things that you can learn from them if you kind of lean in, and they can actually help in that latter twilight period that seems to be very difficult as you care for your elders.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking about the leaning in, right? The leaning in. And that's one of the reasons why we have a book called At Their Feet, which is sitting at the feet of our elders. 50 elders, we compiled their story into that volume. But the whole thing that we're doing here is to encourage each and every one of us to actually lean in, right? To sit at the feet of the elders that we have in our midst, in our families, in our religious centers, in our community at large, because right now we understand that a lot of the knowledge and the wisdom that could be helping us is ending up 6 feet in the ground, and we're not valuing it. So thank you for talking about leaning in. You ready to read a little bit of your story?
Yes.
All right,
yes.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So caregiving wasn't something I never saw coming. When my father and my mother became ill, I didn't call myself a caregiver. I was just doing what needed to be done. I remember attending a conference hosted by the American Society on Aging in California. I went to learn more innovative approaches in the aging industry. In one session, a young Asian woman by the name of Jen Chan, founder of the Senior Shower Project, presented a program to celebrate caregivers, similar to a baby shower, but for caregivers of older adults. She held up a beautiful designed purple and white toolkit. Enclosed were invitations, templates, guidance, language that celebrated the caregiver. Each attendee received a free package. And then she honored us. She called us caregivers. I remember thinking, that's not me. I told her I wasn't a caregiver. I said I simply took my mother to appointments and helped her with outings. But looking back, I realized I was in denial. I hadn't fully admitted what was happening or what would be required. I wanted to keep my old schedule, my normal life, and I didn't want to look too closely at my mother's fears or my own. When she hallucinated, I tried to pacify her and move on. I didn't want to ask more questions. I didn't want to see what I suspected. Denial feels protective, but it delays support. I've learned that there is another way. Embrace what is inevitable. Address denial. Don't remain silent, hoping someone else will handle it. Pray. Ask God to guide you into what you do not know. Begin building a support network early. Since my mother's passing in 2018, other relatives have needed care. Cousin Glo, who later earned a PhD in gerontology and worked as a White House news correspondent in her early years, developed a devastating condition that progressed rapidly. Within months, she lost her voice and mobility, living alone without sufficient services. Even with knowledge of the system, the benefit structure could not meet her needs. I have seen that same struggle in many families. Accidents, rehab, dementia, strokes, homebound elders. Life happens. We must prepare. We don't know what our latter days will look like, but we do know this. We are all aging. In my mother's memory and in the honor of the many elders she cared for, I carry forward lessons I learned the hard way. And I return again to the truth that has helped me through everything. El Rohi, the God who sees me. As I shared at the beginning of this memoir, caregiving did not begin for me as a role or a title. It began as a way of life passed down through the generations. Though I did not have the language for it called caregiving. Long before I ever sat in hospital waiting rooms or negotiated care plans, I was being mentored by elders who showed me, often without words, what it meant to stay present, to protect dignity, and to honor family, no matter the cost. The stories of my parents, grandparents, Aunt Bee, Cousin Glo, and so many others form my earliest understanding of care. Their lives taught me that caregiving is not an interruption to life. It is life. It is shaped by faith, endurance, responsibility, and the belief that no one should be left to walk alone, especially in seasons of vulnerability. What follows is not theory. It is a framework forged through lived experience, through my father's fierce insistence on autonomy, my mother's devotion to service and hospitality, Cousin Glow's intellectual rigor and foresight, and the collective wisdom of elders who model how to carry hardship with grace.
Give it up for Miss Adrena, you all. Sister Adrena, the leaning in, the reflections on your own personal life, all of the beautiful things that you have been bringing forward with this project was really sort of special because you brought two sides to your project. You brought about your own personal life, your own personal experiences with caregiving. Then you also did some research into institutions, mental institutions, like, a lot of different things that was very, very, very. We're going to have you back another time to talk about that part of it as well. But then a big part of what I noticed as far as your goal within this program and within your getting your story done was this desire to help other people be able to become great caregivers and do it with dignity, both for themselves, but also for the actual elder themselves. So, Miss Adrena, I know you have in your work your story and then the second part about the framework and such, but I kind of want to just pull back a little bit, why you didn't necessarily have to do it in this way. Like, why did you choose to come into the project in this way and then to organize your materials in this unique way?
Well, I learned a lot from those that I cared for. When I walked into so-called caregiving, I was trying to do just task-oriented caregiving, things that the system teaches you how to do when it comes to caring for someone. But culturally, it didn't fit. My mother didn't like Meals on Wheels. She didn't. She cooked home cooking. When you looked at the system's list of foods, that was nowhere to be found. Nothing worked. So my sister, pulling in the family that cooked like my mother cooked, that worked. So culturally, I've started to learn that we could not lose that when we are caring for a loved one. My father, who had severe persistent mental illness, just because he had a way that he saw the world through his mental illness, it doesn't give me the right to take his rights away because the system says that's the way that you caregive people with severe and persistent mental illness. He was a civil rights leader in the community at one point in his life. So culturally, I had to acknowledge who he was as a person. And he taught me that through caregiving. So the leaning in is real. That person-centered care that we need to do, that's going to take some time, and it's going to take listening, even in the silence that they may kind of give you. But it's going to take some attentive care and some attentive ways that we interface with our elders.